every educational setting in the country, classes like this one are presenting new challenges for teachers, students, and administrators. And there is nothing particularly unusual about the class. In fact, it is increasingly typical. But many people are finding it difficult to deal with the changes it represents, for this is an intercultural classroom. Simon, on the left, is a South African, sent here to study by his government.
Did you read this? Yes, but
his classmate, Esteban, is from El Salvador. He is staying with relatives while attending school. Mariko has lived in Tokyo all her life. This is her first time away from home, away from her family and her culture. Katya is a Russian student who has traveled widely but has never spent more than a few weeks in any other country until now. Ming comes from the People's Republic of China. His country expects him to do very well here. Like the other international students, he feels the pressure to adapt and adjust every day.
You know, I went to Professor Ford's office to see if he could help me with the reading.
Really? What did he say?
He wasn't there.
That's bad luck.
Well, you know, how can he help us if he's never around in his office?
Well, he's an important man, though.
I just think he's too busy. You know?
Well, keep trying.
Why don't you call him on the phone?
I don't like the telephone, and besides, you're talking to a machine anyway.
It's true.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good. We were just talking about Professor Ford and how busy he is. It's tough.
Yeah, well, what can you do?
Yeah, well, nobody seems to have time here. Everybody's so busy. You know, it makes it really hard for me to get to know people. You know what I mean?
Not really, no. So what'd the reading say about Antarctica?
Are you kidding? You want me to summarize 4 chapters?
Professor Larry Ford has his own pressures. His task extends beyond teaching a class in international relations. He also has to cope with a class divided by culture. Although everyone here knows English, they all seem to be speaking a different language.
First, we want to understand the 1961 Antarctica Treaty. Then, we want to explore possible solutions to the problems that are created by that treaty. Now, for those of us who missed my introduction Friday, could someone review what we discussed? Amy?
Antarctica is currently managed by a small group of economically advanced nations, including the U.S., I think.
High-power industrial nations like U.S. follow international law. There is oil. The powerful nations try to claim all of Antarctica, including oil. That's how powerful nations think.
Okay. Now, if there's any exploitation of the Antarctic, the poorer countries believe that the profits should be shared. So, a lot of lesser developed countries argue that the entire region should be internationally managed, perhaps by the UN. What do we think Washington's policy should be on this?
Status quo.
Why?
It's efficient, it's controllable. Leave it alone.
Besides, the UN can't run a meeting, let alone a continent.
What else?
It's just not in our self-interest to change. Say we spend billions of dollars to build oil wells offshore. We should be able to keep the revenues. There are wells.
In other words, we should own it.
Right.
We?
Well, yeah, you know, at least now there's some incentive for us to invest there, or for any country that wants to take the risk. But if you make the place international, nobody will do anything. There won't be any incentive because there won't be any profits.
Good.
Why do you say that?
We don't want oil wells in Antarctica.
Okay, let's say in 10 years there's a huge energy crisis. Drilling is now more environmentally safe.
That will never happen.
But what if?
Oil wells will never be safe.
How can you be sure?
History. History.
Okay, let's talk about internationalization of the continent.
Okay, I think we ought to do it. We have to keep Antarctica international. We're all too dependent on each other to think only in terms of national interest. We need more stability in the world, not less.
What makes you think internationalization is a stabilizing force?
It is the only way.
Esteban?
Well, historically, we have seen that internationalization hasn't really worked in the past, but it makes more sense now in what we are living now today, with so much hatred and so much wars between people because of oil. I think it's really important that we keep in mind that we must find a new way to solve our problems, and instead of doing the same things we have done in the past with wars and killings.
Go on.
Well, I come from a country that is also in war. And I don't want my children to grow up in a country where people will be just killed because of the necessities of other people, of powerful nations. I think it's important that we find ways to solve our problems in a better way, let's say. I think that we have to find a way to solve those road jumps.
Obstacles.
Exactly. And I think it's important that we find a better way to do things, and instead of just finding a way of killing each other. You know, I don't want my children to grow up in a country, in a nation that is killing each other.
I understand, Esteban, but what specifically about Antarctica?
Exactly. I think that the problem is that there's still people.
Professor, the problem is the ownership of Antarctica. And the 1961 treaty addresses this type of problem.
I know what the solution isn't. Letting every third world country in the UN argue over the place. There'd be war.
Excuse me, Professor, if I may. Some years ago, some Western engineers came to my village to build a bridge there for us. They showed us where we should build the bridge according to their maps. They had figured out where to build the bridge for us. We did not want to offend them, but we wanted to tell them that it would disrupt centuries of life in our community. This history has shaped our people. So many of us have been brought up with a sense of inferiority because of this. We see this attitude in all the Western industrialized countries. I see this attitude in the 1961 treaty. These attitudes have been a destructive force in this world.
I think I agree with Amy, or I don't know if it was Joanna. I mean, what happens if a dictator tries to take over Antarctica?
If it's international territory, it's up for grabs.
I don't think it should be.
How can you say that?
Unless you make it an international territory, it'll lead to nothing but power struggle.
Come on, you don't really believe that, do you?
Yes, I do.
Ming, what do you think?
I think I agree.
With what? With whom?
I think you're right, Professor Ford. The treaty was signed precisely to prevent such conflicts from occurring.
And?
And
Larry, I don't think anyone answered the fundamental question yet. If the U.S. doesn't support international control of Antarctica, won't that lead to a larger conflict?
That's my point.
Okay, that's a good question. Now, what historical precedent do we have to answer such a question?
The 1979 Geneva Treaty of Bailin's Island.
Yeah, but in that case, internationalization led to paralysis. Nothing got done there.
Good.
What do you mean, good?
It is good that nothing got done there. I know because I've been there. It's an incredible place. High cliffs, overlooking rocky beaches, and very unspoiled.
Would you feel the same way if you were a native?
Oh, God. Especially if I were a native.
Okay, let's say that there's a huge oil field discovered offshore that's going to bring money and jobs to the island.
The natives would never share in prosperity.
Never?
Never. If something is unjust, it must be changed. That's all.
Isn't that a little naive? Let's say we internationalize the continent. Some militaristic government comes in, decides to have expansionist policies, and they claim Antarctica.
That is ridiculous.
Is it? The Soviet Union might have planted nuclear weapons there during the Cold War if it hadn't been for that treaty.
What is your evidence to support that? There is none.
I disagree. I think we know enough about the Cold War to support such a conclusion.
And I think you're wrong. And you don't understand anything. And this discussion is meaningless. It doesn't not address the facts.
I think we will agree to disagree. Marika, we haven't heard from you. What do you think about this?
Excuse me?
What's your opinion?
It's a very difficult issue. I think it needs great study.
Excuse me, Professor Ford, but you wanted us to remind you about the papers?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Amy. Listen, why don't you all take a break for a couple of minutes, and I'll go get them.
We're not getting anywhere. Everybody talks, but nobody listens.
Hey, speak for yourself.
I am. It is my opinion that we're not discussing anything.
That's exactly the point.
First, we must listen to the teacher.
Look, we're trying to discuss legitimate issues up here, but some people have trouble sticking to the point.
What do you mean?
Well, I, for one, try to follow along.
You just talk for talking. You don't listen and you have no information.
What's your problem?
All your conversation about dictators. What do you know about dictators?
Listen, if you don't like the way we discuss things, can you tell me why you came here to study? I mean, why didn't you go to college in your own country?
Charlie, shut up.
If you don't like other people's opinions, at least you should be polite. You don't understand.
Give me a break.
It's not as if I don't try. I do. I try very hard. But international students can be so frustrating. I have all these objectives for each class, but I can never get through them. The students just don't talk at all. Or they talk too much. I can't guess what they think, and I can't tell what they know unless they participate.
I try my best, but it is very hard. This is a very different place here. I never can be sure what I'm doing is right or wrong. In China, you cannot interrupt the professor. Even you cannot raise your hand. But here, you must. I trying to talk in the class, but it is very hard to follow the discussion. Sometimes I really want to say something, but when I get a chance, someone else is talking, or the professor has gone on to something else. It is very difficult.
I truly believe that people from other cultures have a lot to offer. I really do. But in class, Esteban and Simon are hard to follow. They never get to the point. I really want to understand, but I have to admit, I get a little impatient.
Sometimes I think the professor and the students get very annoyed with me. Sometimes I don't think they understand me. Perhaps they think I'm not so smart. But I graduated from high school with honors, with many A's. My country believed in me enough to send me here. How can I prove myself to Professor Ford?
I don't know, with some of my international students, I feel as if I'm being too hard. And then with others, it's like they're about to jump down my throat.
I argue because I feel deeply about things. I guess it's a Russian way. And I've studied, and I know facts.
I can argue with my teacher. He's my teacher. The Americans talk like a machine gun. It is very hard to understand what's going on in the class when they talk to each other. If you stop listening for 1 second, you are lost. I think the class should be more formal and respectful.
There are so many things I don't understand. Why does Professor Ford let his student talk so much? He's the one to learn from. In Japan, people only talk to say something very important. You don't just say what is on your mind. People here even talk when they haven't done the reading.
I assume foreign students are here to get an American education. I teach critical thinking, and I expect coherent discussion, clear writing.
Sometimes I think Professor Ford is a very cold person. He doesn't have passion. I know. He thinks I'm crazy. And yet he lets other students to talk nonsense. Why doesn't he tell them that they're wrong? Opinions. What is so important about opinions? We have to deal with the facts. I don't know. Maybe I should not participate in the class anymore. Maybe I just should be quiet.
I don't want to say my opinion. Listening is more important. Professor Ford say, "What do I think?" That is very hard to answer fast. When I look at the paper he gave me back, he said it's good, but what about my opinion? I don't think it's very good to express my opinion.
Professor Ford called me in his office. He wanted to know if I copied something from the book. I said no, I would never do that. I just studied the words from the book. But I don't know if he believed me or not.
I'm sure the foreign students are very interesting people, but I just don't know how to make friends with them. I'm not sure someone like Katya would like to get to know me. She seems so dogmatic about everything. I'd also like to be friends with Mariko, but she seems so shy.
All my friends, they either Russians or other international students. All of them.
The North American students pass me by the hall and they say, "How are you?" But they don't stop to hear my answer. They just go by really fast and they don't want to be my friends. They don't want to get to know me.
These foreign kids, they don't want to fit in. In fact, they do the opposite. They stick together. They don't try to get to know us. And they always seem so disapproving of everything we do and say. Some of them don't even speak English. I mean, it's our country. They're the ones who should change, not us.
If I tell Charlie how I feel, he just ignores me. He doesn't hear what I have to say. And then he's very impolite, and in class, he says things he shouldn't say.
I never know with my international students whether they're motivated by something personal or by an idea.
I'm just not getting through to the teacher, to the class. I talk about the weight of history, the burdens we carry. They talk about solving problems as if it were mathematics. Things cannot be made so simple.
In my country, life is with people. We do things together. But here everybody's an island. Everybody's so busy. I'm learning a lot here. And there are many choices here. I open the newspaper and there are many lectures and concerts and places to go. But what good are the choices if everybody's an island?